Hey guys, Mike here at Amazing Tutorials, and welcome back to a new video. All right, well, I did a couple of videos in the past on UV mapping and so forth, and I still get quite a few questions from people that are struggling with that. So I decided to do a once and for all video, if you know what I mean, where I want to cover pretty much everything that I know about UV creation. Okay? All right, let's hope I can explain it in a way that it's clear to all. Obviously, we're going to need a model, so I'm just going to create a simple table here. Just take a cube, and I'll do something like so. Hit W, pull that up, and we're going to create a couple of table legs. So I'm just going to make that nice and square, and we'll do some height division. There we go. And I'll give it some shape, okay? Just give me a sec. So right click vertex, and what we'll do is we'll just scale that out a bit more, and right click face, and we'll take that, edit mesh, extrude. Yeah, something like so, it's not too bad. All right, let's just see how this looks. Okay, we'll move it under our table. Hit W for wireframe mode. Have to zoom in. Oops, we'll just come on, bring it in here like so. Control D to duplicate, move it over. There we go. Select both. Control D and move it over. Okay. And the position is not the big point right now. Okay. Take these four, bring that down. All right. So here is our ugly table. Okay. But again, never mind. Not too important. All right. Make sure that that's not sticking through. We don't want overlapping UVs. All right. So let's say this is our table. All right. Now, UV mapping. What is UV mapping and why do we want to do that? What's the purpose? Okay. Well, consider this. If you create a model in Maya and you want to add some kind of color or pattern or whatnot to it, you pretty much got two options. Well, you got more options, but two main options. Okay. You can apply a shader or you can apply a 2D external texture file. So if you would want to apply a shader, you just click on that, right click, go to assign new material, choose a Lambert, for example, okay, and change the color to green. And then you can go into your hypershade and add all sorts of stuff and make it look different and so forth. That's kind of the shader principle. The second option is to go in and to take an external flat 2D file and project it and place it on your object. Okay, just gonna get rid of that ugly green here. Um, and in that case, you have a problem. And the problem is a 2D external file is basically a piece of paper. Okay, and it's a piece of wrapping paper. So you need to wrap that paper around your object in a way that it still looks realistic. And you have to deal with all sorts of things, with proportion, with direction, and so forth. All right. So for that, you need to create UVs. And UVs tell Maya how to position that texture. You know, is it up and down or left to right? How big is it, and so forth. Okay. All right, now I did another video on the different types of UVing you can do, and I'll just create an object here, go up to create UVs. You can do planar mapping, which is a projection from the top, the bottom, and so forth. You can go to cylindrical mapping if you have something like this. and go to create UVs cylindrical mapping, and then you see that there's a different projection method. Okay, you can go to spherical mapping. For that, I'll create a sphere. There we go. Or you have the option for automatic mapping. Okay, now I explained all that stuff in another video. I'll paste a link in this one so we don't have to go over that again. We'll just get rid of this stuff here and we'll continue with our table. All right. Okay, so when you texture an object, it's kind of common practice to use a test texture on that. Now, some people do use the checkered pattern that's available in Maya. So they would go to right-click, assign new material, for example, Lambert, hit this checkered box, and go to checker. Then hit this ball up here, and then you have the checkered pattern. Okay. This kind of tells you, whether it's, set up correctly and so forth. Looks like I got a duplicate table going on here. We'll see if that's the case. No, it's not. Okay. So, and you can kind of see that the squares on this pattern are a bit stretched out. They're a bit longer than they're wide, and that's not what you want. You want it to be square. So that's one method. The problem is if you are, for example, using a pattern of a texture of wood, for example, then you have the direction of the wood, right? And the grain, so to speak. Now, if these are exactly square, you don't know which way they're facing. So I typically don't like to use this pattern. I like to use a numbered pattern, right? So we'll just pick one of those up, just Google it. So we'll just go to Google and we'll type in, let's see, UV pattern. Okay, go to images, and here you have all sorts of examples that you can use. Okay, now this one is fairly small, but that should be fine. So we'll just take that and we're going to right click, save image as, and we'll call it UV pattern, save it on my desktop. We're going to go back to Maya, assign new material, Lambert, checkered box, file, folder, and UV pattern. Okay, so now suddenly you can see that the squares are stretched out from left to right, but also you can see that the numbers are facing upwards. Okay, and like I said, that's important to know. All right. So let's get started. We're going to start with the easy one. We're going to start with the tabletop. Okay, so let's select that. Now, if you go to our Create UV section, you can, in this case, probably do planar mapping, but I typically choose automatic mapping just to see what we get. Okay. All right. So you can see that it is created okay. You can also see that the direction is different and that you have some issues on the sides. Okay. So let's go into our UV. We're going to go to Edit UV, UV Texture Editor. We're going to zoom out a little bit. And if I click on this face guy right here, you can see that a number of UVs have been created. Now, there's a bit of a problem there. The way that this is projected, it projects from the top, the side, and so forth. These are individual elements. Now, remember when I told you that it's like in a kind of wrapping it in paper? These are a number of pieces, and you want to use, lowest number possible. So it's like wrapping a book. If you can do that with one piece of paper, that'd be great. Two tops, but not 5 or 6, all right? So we're going to move this over a little bit so we can see what's going on. And we have a face selected right here. Okay, so we're going to hit W to move it. And you can see that as we move this, the texture on the top of our table is moving as well. But what you can also see is that the sides are not moving, and that's because these are not connected. Okay, so I'm going to move this over to the side, and I'm going to decide where I want to have the seam of my texture. Now, what do I mean by that? there's probably going to be a seam somewhere, right? Because this is a flat surface, it's not round, so it's going to have to connect with itself at some point, okay? So we need to decide where we want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to connect these sides to the top. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to right click, go to edge, and I'm going to drag select that edge. And as I do that, a corresponding edge shows up, and that's the one all the way over here on the right, okay? So that should connect to that. That's fine. So I'm going to go up here to this little cross thingy, move and sew. Okay. So I'm going to click on that, and suddenly there's an edge up here and a face. So if I select this now, right-click shell, and I move it, suddenly you can see the top is moving, and so is this side right here. Okay. So that's not connected. All right. We're going to do the next one. We're going to go down here, right-click edge, select it, corresponds to this guy. Okay, stick it in there. All right, this one corresponds to that one. And here we go. This one corresponds to that one. There we go. And now we're getting to the tricky part. We can connect this guy to this edge if we want. Come on, let's see. And we can, but we'll have to cut and so forth. But first we're going to figure out where he wants it to be. He wants it to be here, okay? So we'll do that first. Okay, so now we have everything in one go. So if I right click and go to shell, select it, and I move this, everything now moves, and I'll show you. All right, okay. Now, let's say for whatever reason that, so our seam is at this end, okay. Let's say for whatever reason you don't want the seam to be at that end because it's visible in your shot, okay? And you want to avoid that. You always want to put your seams in areas where you can't see them if possible. Now this texture is fairly seamless, but if you have one that is not, you want to kind of hide where that connects up, all right? So what you can do in that case is you can decide to move the seam, all right? So here these two belong together apparently. What we can do is we can right click, go to edge, and we can select this edge, and we can go up to the scissors, and they are right there, and we're going to cut that. All right. So now if we right click and shell, this is once again free to move around, and you can decide to leave that separately. So we got UV this and UV that, or you can decide to texture to attach it. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like this and just take out that seam. Okay, so like I said, this is the easy part. So we're going to just move this over here, move this over here, and we're going to try to proportionally get these things nice and square. So we'll start with this one first. That is the bottom, so we'll take this one first. Okay. As I pull that up, you can see that the numbers are getting smaller, the cubes. The problem is I need to stay in my 0 to 1 space, okay? And that is the space that we're working right here, this quadrant, okay? And I can only position my entire texture once I have my entire object. So we're just gonna make sure that these two are not overlapping. We'll close that for now, and we'll get into these guys. Okay, so we're gonna take leg number 1, object mode, okay? Right click, assign new material, Lambert, checkered box, file, folder, UV pattern. Okay, now as you can see, this is the reason why we use that pattern. Okay, the tabletop was fairly easy. This looks a bit funky. Okay, so we're going to go up and we're going to go to create automatic mapping. Let's see what happens. All right, that's already much better. Okay, you can kind of compare the squares to see if they're equally sized to the ones up here. But more importantly, at this point, you want to figure out where your seam is. Now, in a shot like this, you would probably decide to have the seam on the inside. So that would be this edge. And I'll just show it, okay? So pointing inwards on the table. And once again, if you have a seamless texture, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to see it. If you don't, then you need to consider this, okay? There's one other thing. I'm just going to go to object mode and I'm going to lift my tabletop here for a sec. Now, there are faces on top here. Why would you want to do that? Okay, these faces are never going to be visible. They only add to the poly count. You don't want that, and it's additional work. So we're going to right click and we're going to take that top and we're going to move it. Okay, then we'll take the table, bring it back down. All right, so we got that. Okay, we did automatic mapping. Let's select this guy and go to edit UVs and UV texture editor and see what we got. Okay, now what we've got here is what, four sides to the leg. So this is not four legs, it's four sides to the leg, okay? And then we've got the bottom. And we don't have the top because we just removed that, all right? So we've got pretty much the same deal here. So we're gonna right click, go to shell. We're gonna select that and we're gonna bring that out. And as this is the thickest point right there, we're gonna right click on this edge right here and see what it comes up with. And it wants to connect to this guy, okay? So these two are not connected. Right click shell, select that, bring that out. Right click edge to that side. He wants to connect to this guy, so we're gonna do that. There we go. Right click edge. That guy wants to connect to that guy. Fine. And then we have this end piece. Now we can connect either of these four. We can also do this, and it wants to connect down here. Okay. So there you go. So now if I right click and go to shell and I select this, I got everything. Okay. And I can now once again move the whole texture and so forth, and all of that is covered. Okay. So now that we've got that, we need to consider something. The easiest way you would probably think is, okay, so I got one table leg, why not just copy the UV table leg, okay? And then I got four of them, saves me a lot of time. Now, the issue that you got there is if you do that and you're using a wood grain texture, then the four legs will look identical. So if you have four UV shells for each leg, you can position them differently on your texture and it will look much more realistic. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. All right. So like I said, we want to have the edge on the inside here. So we're going to find out where that is. So we're going to right click at the edge and we'll just select that. And as you can see, that is the connection between these two. So we're going to make the seam there. So we're going to right click, we're going to go to edge and we're going to select this edge and we're going to hit the cut tool like so. And now we should be able, right click shell to take that and move it out. And now we're going to right click and go to edge and select this one and connect it to this one. Okay. So once again, we can now right click shell. We can move it around, but our seam, our outer seam right now is exactly where we want it. It's pointing inwards on the table. Okay. So one more thing we can do, and I'm not going to do all the legs because it's just time consuming, is we're going to position them properly on the grid. So I'm going to select both this guy and this guy. And if you do all the legs, obviously select them as well. We're going to go to edit UVs, UV texture editor. And we now have a couple of things that we need to combine in the same space. All right. So we're going to right click, go to shell. We got this guy and shift select this guy. We're going to scale that down to about so. We're going to move that up to about there. And then we're going to shift select these. And we're going to rotate. Hit R to scale down. W to bring down, not too bad. Now let's just check the spacing here. As you can see, the squares on the table are quite large, and we don't really have a lot of space for this. So what we could do to get that equal, if necessary, is to take this guy, scale it. So right click shell to the max capacity of our UV space. So hit R, bring it back a little bit, like so. Let's see how that looks. Okay, not bad. And then let's apply a material to that. So let's do a wood texture. We'll do something that's nice and big. And it doesn't really matter what you use for that. It's just any wood, okay? All right, so right click, assign new material, Lambert, checkbox, file, folder, wood. Okay. Now, what you can see right here is that you have your wood grain moving in this direction. Okay. That's fine if that is what you're going for. Now, obviously, if you don't want that, you're going to right click, go to object mode. You're going to go to edit UVs, UV texture editor. You're going to right click shell, take both, hit rotate, rotate, and suddenly your wood grain is in this direction. Okay. Just going to check our sides. All right. That looks fine because that's equal to that. This is coming straight down as it should because that's how that works with wood, and that looks fine. And that's in the same direction. All right. We only need to go to our shell, the whole shell, bring it down just a little to make sure it's in our 0 to 1 space. All right. Then let's go to our leg here. Right click object mode, assign new material, Lambert, check it box, file, folder, wood. Okay. Now in this case, you want the wood to have the grain going straight up, and it does. So that looks okay. So we're going to go to Edit UVs, UV Texture Editor, and here they are. Okay, that's the one with the little bottom section on it. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to right-click, go to Shell. We're going to select this. We're going to pull that up and hit R and scale it up somewhat. To about so. And now we're going to go to object mode and select both. And now I'm going to look and see if we can get this into one space. Just want this guy. Why is he selecting him? Okay, move this one out of the way. And move that one out of the way. We'll take that. And it kind of depends on the size of your texture files. I want this to be in one UV space so I can create a color map, for example. We're going to scale that down a bit. Oops, make sure I got scale. There we go. Come on. There we go. All right. So if you had all 4 legs UV'd and the top and the bottom of the table, that would all fit in nicely and it would roughly have the same proportion. So let's see how that looks. There we go. So that is a little bit about how to right-click and select the shell, how to right-click and select an edge, how to select an edge and move and sew the edges, how you can cut the edges and connect them somewhere else, and so forth. Okay, so hopefully this clarifies a few more questions that you might have on UV mapping. It's probably the most boring activity that there is, but it's also a very important one. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thanks. Bye.